Hey everybody, Jane here, and we are going to talk today about the 12 books I read or attempted to read during the month of March.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
Alright guys, so March ended up being a little bit of a slumpy month for me, at least compared to January and February. I felt like January and February I was on a roll, I was reading so much, and then in March it just went to a screeching halt. And I was struggling to pick up books. I was struggling to be engaged in the books I was picking up. So it ended up being just kind of a rough reading month. And I think we're going to see that reflected in the books that I did end up reading. This was supposed to be a big reading month because I was involved in two different readathons. The Murder Mystery readathon hosted by Rye Reads channel, and then also the Middle Grade March that's hosted by Books and Jams. And at the end of the day, I didn't do great in either, though I read at least one book for each challenge. So let's start with my stats, and then we'll go over the books that I read. So as I said, I read 12 books. My goal is to read this year 50% or more owned books because I'm trying to get through my shelves. I did succeed in reading 50% exactly owned books. Now, last month, if you watched my wrap up, I was actually a bit under the number for owned books last month. So definitely I'm going to need to prioritize catching up. So for the month, I'm fine, but for like the year, I'm slightly behind that 50-50 number. I also try to read, I think I said 10% indie books. And so I read at 25%, I believe, this month, indie. So that number is fine. I'm reading a lot of indie authors this year, and I was really proud of myself. So stats-wise, I'm doing okay. Read a little less books than I wanted to, and overall didn't enjoy my reading experience quite as much this month as I did in the last 2 months of the year, but they can't all be winners. All right, let us start with my DNFs. And then after my DNFs, we will go over the books that I read in order of least favorite to most favorite. All right, so the first DNF I had, sadly, was The Girl Who Drank the Moon. This had been actually sitting on my TBR for a while. It was one that I bought brand new at the store. I really had heard great things about it. I was so excited to read it, and it just was not working for me. It is about a witch who lives in the forest, and this town keeps sacrificing once a year. They bring a baby and drop it in the forest so the witch will bless the town, but the witch doesn't actually want these babies and just rehomes them. And as she's taking the most recent child to rehome, she accidentally feeds them from the moon instead of the stars, therefore giving this baby girl magic powers. And so then she's stuck raising this child, and complex things happen from there. I just did not enjoy this book. I even tried it on audio, so I was really struggling in iReading, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll try audio, maybe that'll work. And I just couldn't get involved and interested in the things that were happening in this book. We have a couple different things happening. We have somebody in the village who is trying to figure out like some of the shady stuff that's going down, including like why these kids are getting sacrificed. And then you have the witch and this magic little girl and her growing up and her coming into her powers and the complexity around that. And I don't know why it wasn't hitting, but it just was not hitting, and I was so bored. And I was probably about 100 pages in when I just was like, I can't pick this book up anymore. I think I spent probably a week trying to read it, which is a really long time for me, and I just kept not wanting to pick it up, so it was a miss. All right, the next book that I did not finish, the last one, real quick, the last one, this was on my TBR, or this was for middle grade March, a book you feel you missed out on. I did not indeed miss out on this one because I did not enjoy it. The next one, Dying to be Thin. This was one I selected for the mystery readathon, and it was the prompt, has a weapon on the cover. So it turns out that this book is really fat phobic. It is about a woman who is a little bit overweight and is going to this like getaway for people who are heavy and, you know, trying to lose weight there. I did not get very far. Within the first, I think, 3 or 4 chapters, there had already been a lot of offensive things said about people with bigger bodies, and I noped out. All right, and my final DNF, and this was the mystery prompt, a whodunit, and it is The Fall of White City. This, I don't think was a bad book. I just was really bored, and I think I was already kind of slumpy, and a book that wasn't catching my attention was just never going to work for me. So you have this woman, and she teaches foreign people who've moved to the US how to speak English, and she had been tutoring this one girl and her brother in English, and the girl is found murdered and the brother is the primary suspect. So the teacher ends up trying to figure out like who actually did it, so that because she doesn't believe the brother did it. This wasn't bad. I just, like I said, I was reading and reading and reading, and I just couldn't get invested. So it may not have been the book as much as me. I don't plan to go back to it though, because I think I'll always, if I left it on my shelves, I'd be like, oh, that's the book that, you know, it was fine, but I was bored with. So I'm definitely going to be unhauling this one as well. I unhaul most books after I read them. There's some that I don't, but this one wasn't quite working for me like I wanted it to. But I don't think it's a bad book. I wouldn't not recommend this one. It just wasn't working for me this time. All right. Now we have the books that I did finish. And the first book on our list was a 3-star. I didn't have any 1s or 2s this month, which is pretty typical for me. I don't rate 1s or 2s very often. A book really has to do some things wrong if I'm going to rate it that low. So my lowest was a 3-star, and that book is 3 Things I'd Never Do. This was a book about a girl who, her mom sets her up on a blind date, but before she meets the blind date, she has an incident where she has to be rescued by firefighters, and when she arrives on this blind date, the guy is one of the firefighters who rescued her from a very awkward situation, and she is super embarrassed. And even though he's really nice, she is, number 1, dealing with the embarrassment, and number 2, also dealing with the fact that she has said she will never date a guy who has dogs. She has a cat, she doesn't like dogs, and so she does not want to date a guy who has dogs. This book really honestly made me mad. I was reading it as a buddy read with Gower Bat, and we selected it because this is his favorite author. And he assures me that a lot of her other books are better, and this was just kind of one of her duds. And, you know, every author has them. But for me, my issue was I hated the main conflict being that this girl just hates dogs. I'm an animal lover, and the constant, I don't want to date you because I hate your dogs. And these were well-behaved, sweet dogs. She just doesn't like dogs and doesn't want to date somebody that has dogs. And everybody's all like, you said you'd never date anybody with dogs. And I just hated that complete storyline, and that whole point of conflict just did not work for me because I love dogs. So yeah, I think other people may get on with this book a lot better than I did. I really did not enjoy it. but I didn't think there was anything wrong, like objectively wrong with it. I think it just isn't for somebody who likes dogs, like me. The next 3-star we have is 27 Minutes. This is a mystery, and it involves a car accident that took place 10 years ago. As we enter this book, we are at the 10-year mark, and they are going to be doing a, what do you call it? A memorial for the girl who lost her life in that car accident. And as people are kind of revisiting it, there are some questions, including why did it take 27 minutes in order to call an ambulance? The day of the accident, the people in the car was a girl. I think her name was Paige, her brother Grant, and their friend Becca. And I read this book, or picked this book up for the prompt multiple POVs for the mystery readathon. I felt this book was kind of boring. I did not like one of the POV characters, and that was Becca. I found her absolutely insufferable. And I think based on some of the things that happen later in the book, she's probably supposed to be completely insufferable, but she was really insufferable and I really didn't like her. And that caused kind of a lot of issues for me for reading this book. Also, without spoilers, some of the reveals at the end I felt were not fair. And that ended up making me like this book a little bit less. There was some stuff happening that when the reveals happened, I just didn't think they were fair reveals, and it kind of ruined a little bit of my experience. I think other people will really like this. I think the twist ending not working for me was a me issue, but it just, yeah, it didn't work for me. The next book I read was True Petectives. Now, I'm actually using this as a double for the mystery. I only read the first book, which is Petectives, or the first story. This is 3 stories. It's Petectives, Petectives Christmas Party, and Petectives Under Fire. And I'm going to be using this for published in March for the mystery readathon, and I'm also going to be using it in the middle grade readathon for has a pet or an animal on the cover. So initially I did not realize this was middle grade. I went back and looked at the book on Amazon, and it says it's for ages 10 and up. I'm going to call that middle grade. I don't know if it really is, but I think for the rating I'm going to be giving it, I need it to be middle grade. So I just read the first book in the series, which was Petectives, and it was about these 2 cats who are trying to solve a neighborhood mystery. There is a cat that has gone missing, and his sister shows up to talk to these cat detectives and is like, hey, my brother's missing, can you help me? And so these cats go on an adventure to try to find her brother, and it's a mystery of like what happened to him. I enjoyed this, but it was very simple. I can see it being like a middle grade and that working, and I did give it a 4-star as a middle grade. I don't think as an adult book this is like a great book, but I think as a middle grade mystery for a 10-year-old, this book would really work well. It was fairly simplistic, but still a lot of fun. The dialogue was fun. The cats were fun. It was just a good time, but a little bit on the simplistic side. The next book on our list is Because of Winn-Dixieby. And I read this for middle grade March, and the prompt for that was a debut novel. Because of Winn-Dixieby is about a girl who is in a new town. She's lonely, she's struggling, and she finds a dog at the grocery store that she kind of rescues, brings home, and this dog changes her life. The dog does live. That was an important point because I was worried that we were going to have, middle grade book where I cry a lot, there's going to be a dead dog. I did cry a lot. This was a heartwarming, feel-good book that I really enjoyed in a lot of ways. It was fairly simple. It was fine. I like coming back and thinking about it because I read it early in the month. I don't necessarily remember a lot about it. I just remember like while I was reading it, there was all the feels. So I think it was good. I'm not sad I read it, and I quite enjoyed it. All right, the next book is a manga, and I think it is the only manga I read this month, and that is A Man and His Cat, Volume 2. I also gave this 4 stars. It is about a man who adopts a cat and kind of like why he adopted the cat. I gave the first book a 5 star. This is kind of still in the same vein. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it progressed the story very much, so I didn't enjoy it quite as much as book 1. And I will probably continue at least a few more issues to see if we learn things and we have reveals and stuff is interesting. One of the things I'm finding about mangas for myself is that some of them get kind of repetitive, and I don't necessarily enjoy that aspect. Like, I want us to not exactly be one and done, but like get in there, tell me the story, and let's be done, and let's not drag out cute cat antics 10 volumes. The next 4 star I have is A Gathering of Secrets. This was for the mystery readathon, and it was for the prompt part of a series. I have read one other book in this series, and here's kind of my complaint about this series. There is a female detective, and she used to be Amish. She's solving mysteries mostly within the Amish community, and this book and the first book, she was too personally invested in the mysteries and not professional enough. So in this book, we have her investigating a boy who was killed in a barn fire, and the barn fire was arson, and they believe he was an intentional target, so they had to figure out who killed him. He was not a very good person. There was a lot of issues with him. I did not guess the ending, which I guess, makes it a pretty good mystery. Overall, I enjoyed a lot of the conversation that we were having, but I just feel like in the first book that I read, and this one as well, I think her name's Kate. Yes, Kate. Just gets too involved, like emotionally, and can't drag herself away from the mysteries enough, like put herself professional distance. She was raised Amish, so certain elements of the Amish community and Amish life really affect her, and I did like this one better than book 1, but overall, this is not a series I would go out of my way to pick up. Like, if I happened to pick it up, fine, this was on my shelves, and I think until I started reading it, I'd completely forgotten that it was even like the same series. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's that one, isn't it? So I wouldn't go out of my way to pick these up, but I didn't think this one was bad. All right, so the last 4 star I have was Witchy Wonderland. This is the, I think it's 5 novellas set in the Stay a Spell world, and it's like 3 Stay a Spell series, book 3.5. I enjoy this world. I enjoy these characters. I had some stories that I liked better than others. There's some characters I liked better than others. I appreciated some of what we were doing, but I didn't necessarily like it as well as any of the Stay a Spell books I've read so far. And I think I could have skipped this one. I could have probably skipped it. It had some nice spicy bits, but I didn't think there was anything in it that I would have felt like I missed out on if I had just skipped it and gone on to the next book. Now there is setup for book 4 because there's one novella that is the couple in book 4. So I am optimistic that book 4, will make that read a little bit more worthwhile. I will also say, like, some stuff happens at the end of book 3 that, initially isn't happening in the beginning of the novella. And so at first I was really confused because I thought we were going to be like time jumping after book 3. And we did later in the book. But like, I was like, wait a second, didn't this thing happen? So anyway, I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I do really love the series and the characters, and I was invested in them. So it was a good read and one that I got through, and I buddy read that with Corey Overmeyer, who I have been in several anthologies with. He's part of my writers group. All right, so now we are moving on to my 5 stars. And as much as it feels like I didn't have a great reading month, I actually had quite a lot of 5-star reads. So that was kind of a win. Okay, so the first book on my 5 stars was Rajal's Resonance. This is the spin-off clone Ice Planet Barbarian series. If you are reading Ice Planet Barbarians, I do not recommend jumping ahead to this series because stuff happens. Like, there's so much stuff. I'm still in the middle of Ice Planet Barbarians, the regular series, and I'm waiting for the next book in that series to come from my library. And I just needed some more Ruby Dixon. And so I jumped ahead because I was like, I'm probably okay. I've totally spoiled myself for like so much. But I did jump ahead. I started it. And because I understand the series and most of what's going on, it was like, oh, there's a couple big spoilery things plot-wise. And I hadn't met like half the characters. But I understood what was going on. This was kind of a low 5 for me. I generally have been loving the Ice Planet Barbarians, and this one, it wasn't bad enough that I wanted to give it a 4, but it's a very low 5, like a 4.75 maybe instead of like a 5. So the main reason it did get a 5 for me is I loved the heroine. Her name is Rosalind, and she's a fan fiction writer, and she's a librarian, and I love her. I love her, and there's like a side plot later in the book about something that she's doing for the village that's given me like vibes of another series I'm reading. I won't tell you what it is because it'll spoil things. But anyway, I really liked Rosalind. I really liked her character and some of the story stuff happening. My issues with the book. I was not a huge fan of Rajal, who is the hero. He is a sympathetic character, and there was a lot of things that I think he had going for him. I didn't think he was terrible, but he is very like deceptive a lot of the time with Rosalind, and I didn't enjoy that. He is often being like, oh, I should probably let her know about that, but I'm not going to because it might upset her, and we're trying to like deal with this stuff. So Rajal and Rosalind get kidnapped at the beginning of the book. And so the initial book is how do we escape? And they resonate in this jail cell, and of course she doesn't have a key yet, and it's just, high stakes hot mess. I felt not only did I not like Rajal, but there was a lot more plot and action and adventure, which is not what I'm coming to Ice Planet Barbarians for. Sometimes it's fine. In the 3rd Ice Planet Barbarians book in the main series, Kira, there's like a little bit of sci-fi alien stuff happening, and I was fine with it. And it didn't affect my read, but I still felt like, okay, could we just get away from the aliens and back to the barbarians? And I felt like that so much with this book. Like there was a lot of plot stuff, and it's setting up a whole new plot thing in Ice Planet Barbarians, like big plot things. And so I just got really like, oh my gosh, can we have less plot and more I love you and cuddling and Bice, all this stuff. And yeah. So yeah, it ended up not being a major hit for me. I didn't hate it. So far, I haven't read anything from Ruby Dixon that's gotten less than a 4. So, like, I'm not mad I read it, but it definitely, and maybe I would have felt differently if I'd have read everything in between it and not skipped around. It's not going to stop me, but maybe. Yeah, bit of a miss. The next book I read for middle grade March, and that was When Stars Are Scattered. This was for the prompt about refugees. This is a nonfiction account of 2 brothers who are refugees, and they are in a refugee camp. I cried so much. I was really affected. These poor boys. It was beautiful, but also like so many emotions. It's very good. I highly recommend, but wow, it packs an emotional punch. So we have the older brother who is like trying to go to school, trying to figure out what's going on. Their parents are not at camp with them. He has been assigned like a foster mom, but there's still like separation because they're not blood related. And so like he is largely taking care of his brother with a little bit of help from this lady. And his brother has disabilities. His brother is nonverbal, and his brother has seizures, I think. And so he's like struggling to take care of his brother and manage life in this refugee camp without his parents, and with the desire to be one of the people that gets to go to America or Canada or somewhere that is not this refugee camp where he has been since he was very small, and he doesn't really have much memories of before. Like I said, this was so good, but man, this is a rough cry your eyes out read. But I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, and then my biggest hit of the month was Barbarian's Touch. And in this we have Lila, and she has just arrived on Not Hoth. I'm trying not to give spoilers. She's just arrived on Not Hoth. She's confused, isn't sure what's going on, and she is deaf. She had a cochlear implant, but she doesn't have it now, and she is a sign language user. So she is immediately abducted by one of the guys, and then she escapes and is found by another one of the guys who she resonates to. I really loved the sign language aspect, the disability rep, the way that they solve the language barrier, because I can't say much because this is so far in the series, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was great. Neither of these characters are my favorites. I enjoyed them. I liked them, but definitely like I have certain books that are my absolute favorites. This is good, but it's not a new favorite. It has not replaced Kira's book or Tiffany's book, and Hayden is still my alien not Hoth husband. So, but overall, I thought this was good. I thought it was fun. There were some plot things I could have lived without. There were the situation with her initially being kidnapped by the guy could have been shorter. Like, I have some very minor complaints. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this book. And of course, I plan on continuing the series because it's Ruby and it's amazing. So those were the books I read in March. I think for April, I am going to mood read because I am still feeling a little bit slumpy. I am also in the middle of like several other books that I would like to finish. So I'm actually like mid 4 books. I think 4 or 5 books. So I definitely also started those in March, but just didn't quite get them finished before our wrap up. And that's fine. But yeah, I think April is just going to be a read what I want, when I want, and go with the flow. So, have you read any of the books that I read this month? And if so, what did you think? Did you participate in Middle Grade March or the mystery, Rye Reads Mystery Readathon? And if so, what were your books for the different prompts? And if you don't have any other thoughts but still want to help the algorithm, you can leave a little emoji with books. Because, obviously when you like and comment and all that stuff, the algorithm knows to send this to other people who might also enjoy it. This has been Jane. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye!